So today we're at the Bay of Islands Marina, and it's right next to open ocean, which makes water makers. And today what we're going to do is try to take the black magic out of the water maker.
On the day that we were about to leave French Polynesia, we found out our water maker was making salt water.
So I'm not sure what happened to our water maker, but it started making really bad water. So I came down here and I did a little work on the water maker. And I found out that this membrane was giving us really salty water, but this membrane was actually okay. So I rerouted everything. So this membrane just goes into the bilge. And this membrane actually gives us the good water. I didn't know if I could do that when I started, but after I figured it out and I had all the stuff to do it, that saved our ass, because we're in the middle of nowhere and we need water. And that right there is enough water. That's 25 liters an hour of water. We make 50 normally, but now we only make 25. But that's enough to get us through.
Z and I decided to wait until New Zealand to get the water maker repaired. So when we arrived, we started looking for a place to fix the water maker. So while everybody else is having a good time at Sail Week, we're going to be talking about the installation, operation, and maintenance of a water maker. We'll also try to give you some cost-saving tips. We had our water maker repaired at Open Ocean. We are very happy with their service, and we decided to sit down with Rick and talk about water makers.
Well, we know the man's here. There's his ride. Oh, what's up?
I think what he said was Rick's waiting for us in the workshop.
You don't notice how much you rely on it until you don't have it.
Yeah, I cruised for a year without a water maker, and then I put one in when I was in the deserts on the west coast of Mexico.
Yeah.
Never looked back.
Yeah.
Within a couple days, we headed off, and we planned to be gone for a couple weeks. 8 weeks later, we finally hit the next town.
Yeah.
There are some sailors out there that'll tell you that water maker's expensive, hard to maintain, better just to buy your water on the run. But I'll tell you what, if you want to be comfortable while you're cruising, you want a water maker. Now that we know we want a water maker, what do you need on your boat to install a water maker? Yep, that's it. Power, seawater, a fresh water tank, and a drain. That's all you need. Now let's take a look at the components of a water maker. The high pressure pump has a high pressure output and a low pressure input. The pump can be powered by alternating or DC current, and in some cases it can be powered by both AC and DC. The pump can also be mounted to the main engine and powered via a pulley. Another important specification for the high pressure pump is gallons per minute or liters per minute, and this specification is directly proportional to the amount of membrane surface area in your system. Let's take a look at a few pumps to see what they look like physically. This is a DC pump made by Dessalator, and this is what our pump looked like when it was brand new. Here are some of the pumps that are supplied by Open Ocean. And I'll let Rick show you a pump that can be mounted to the engine.
An engine drive pump runs off of a 13A belt, which is a super common, off of a power takeoff pulley on the engine. We make up these sliding base plates to make belt tensioning easier. So whatever bracket you mount this on in the boat, you can just use 4 fasteners and tension the belt horizontally with this bracket. For engine drive pumps that are mounted either above or below the power takeoff pulley, we have this sort of bracket. So the pump is mounted on this, and it tensions very much like an alternator bracket. Of course, with this style of pump, it's a splash lubricated gearbox, so it needs to be more or less level. So unlike an alternator, it doesn't care what angle it's sitting at. The pump, when it's got a tight belt, wants to be pretty close to level. So that's why the pivoting bracket allows you to get the belt on and off and tension it easily just with this tensioning bolt.
The membrane tube holds the membrane inside and has a high pressure input and a high pressure output and a freshwater output. This is what the membrane assembly looks like on Aquarius. The number 3 arrows show you the high pressure input and output, and down below all the way to the right you can actually see the output of the freshwater. This is how the RO membranes are assembled, and also if you click the link above you'll actually link to a video which shows you how the RO membranes work. It's really cool. This is a tube supplied by Open Ocean. The control panel has a freshwater input, a high pressure input, a drain, and a freshwater output. This is a control panel for the Duo 60. It has an on-off switch which you can turn to 230 volts AC or 24 or 12 volts DC. It has a knob that regulates the pressure on the membranes, a gauge so you can visually see the pressure on the membranes. This unit also tests the salinity of the water. Basically, it measures the resistance of the freshwater output, and it can tell the salinity from the resistance measurement. It also has a flow meter, which tells you how much fresh water per hour you are making. This unit also tells you hours of service. Here's one of the panels provided by Open Ocean. It also has a knob to control the pressure on the membranes and a gauge so you can see the pressure. It has switches for the boost pump, the high pressure pump, and it also has an automated flush system. This is a separate valve which switches the output from the tank to usually so you can test the water and output at the sink or fill up bottles of water. To finish off our system, let's add some filters. You have the 5-micron filter to filter out anything larger than 5 microns so that it doesn't get in your high pressure pump or your membranes. The membranes can be damaged by chlorine, and you add a carbon filter to filter out any chlorine that may be in your water tank. There are some companies will provide an option where you can pair a 20-micron filter with the 5-micron filter to better filter the water going into your high pressure pump. But for this video, we'll stick with the 5-micron filter.
Yeah, this is a pleated polyester filter element. The standard 10-inch, which is actually about 9 3/4 inches in reality. It's the most common filter size in the world, and yeah, you need to filter your seawater down to 5 microns.
And 2 of these can last you up to a year, just constantly, cleaning them up. And
exactly, yeah. So if you have 2 of these rotating, you swap them frequently, clean off the filter media, usually with a soft rag, and pretty much any kind of water. You can even do the cleaning in seawater if you don't have an abundance of fresh water available. It's a good idea to stand these under your dodger, someplace where it's dry but getting sunlight, because the UV will help to sterilize the filter media so it doesn't have little creepy crawlies on it.
Right.
This is an example of a 10-inch carbon block charcoal filter. This is something that will remove 100% of the chlorine from the water that is in the tank. So if you take on water from the dock, from a town supply, it's pretty likely to be chlorinated. So this will protect the membrane from that chlorine.
Now let's add some valves. That's about all the components we need. Now let's connect them all up. There's our fully operational water maker. If your high pressure pump is above the water line, you may need a boost pump. Some water makers are set up to be fully automated, and they'll have electronic valves. And most water makers will have some type of taste tube or taste hose where you can taste the water before it goes into your tank. Well, I think it's time to turn on our water maker. So let's turn her on. There's one valve in the wrong position, so let's change it. Now let's give it some power. The seawater flows from the seawater intake through the valves, through the 5-micron filter, through the high pressure pump, pushed through the membranes, and then to the control panel and out the drain. On Aquarius, we'll wait 3 to 5 minutes before we start to pressurize our membrane tube. Then we slowly bring up the pressure on the membranes. We bring up the pressure slowly, and it usually takes about a minute and a half. Now we're making water. After we've made all the water we need, we'll bring down the pressure on our membranes.
I had heard that as long as you're continually running seawater through it, you don't need to rinse. So what's your thoughts on that?
The problem with leaving seawater in your system when it's idle is you've got active corrosion from the caustic nature of seawater and all the metal components that are in your high pressure pump and other parts of the water maker. So they'll all be reacting in a way you don't want them to react with seawater. And the membrane itself is sensitive to the acts of the microorganisms that live in seawater. So those microorganisms act on the membrane in a similar way that tooth decay acts on your teeth. So if you can displace those by flushing fresh water through the membrane, during all the idle time where the water maker is not actually running, it will be protected from corrosion and protected from the tooth decay kind of effects of the microorganisms on the membrane surface. So if you're not running your water maker, but you're on your boat, say you've got full water tanks, or you just stopped at the fuel dock and topped up your water tanks, and you've got plenty of water, you need to flush the system every 7 to 10 days. So refreshing that fresh water will keep everything happy, maximize the service life of your membrane. For folks that have 1 foot on the boat and 1 foot ashore, intend to get to their boat every week, because they're going to go out and they're going to do a flush cycle every week. But the reality is a shore-based life keeps them away from the boat some weekends. They can get this magic little timer box, and when you shut down your system after making water, it will reflush the system every 7 days, whether you're aboard or not. So it keeps your water maker happy, whether you're aboard or you get stuck going to a dance party.
So that and a couple automatic switches that this turns on.
This uses the same flush switch same flush that we've got on our regular control panel. We just swap out the single action switch for the one we've got on this panel over here. So if you're going to be on the boat all the time, you push it up and it does a single flush, which is a momentary. And if you're going to leave the boat, or potentially leave the boat, put it in the down position, flushes once immediately, and then we'll continue flushing every 7 days.
Oh, so you have all the circuitry on here, so these are just automatic switches.
Yeah, this is a charcoal filter. So the flush switch connects to this solenoid valve. So whether it's a manual flush or an automatic flush, it opens up this valve, allows fresh water to go through this and displace the seawater in the system.
So I guess it's time to flush our system. Once we've turned on the valves, the fresh water flows through our system. You'll need to run enough fresh water through your system to displace all the seawater and fully rinse your membranes. That could be as much as 1 hour worth of output of your water maker.
When the system is going to be idle for more than 7 to 10 days, you need to do what's called pickling the system, pickling the membrane. That's using a chemical to replace the fresh water and acts as a preservative. Basically sterilizes the membrane so that no microorganisms that happen to be in the water can act on the membrane. Each pickling cycle lasts for about 6 months, after which it's best to, even if you're not going to recommission the water maker, to give it a good freshwater flush and repickle it rather than just leave it. The pickling process will depend from manufacturer to manufacturer, but basically you mix up a pickling solution. Most of the pickling solutions recommended by water maker manufacturers are sodium metabisulfite, which happens to be commonly used in the brewing industry for sterilizing bottles and brewing equipment. Make sure it's sodium metabisulfite and not one of the other sterilization chemicals that they use. And basically, the manufacturer of your system will have instructions on how to get that pickling solution from mixed up in a bucket into the system, and that'll vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. Sodium metabisulfite, it's the most common pickling chemical. Not all water maker manufacturers recommend this, but most of them are quite happy that you use sodium metabisulfite for pickling their systems.
So let's pickle our system. We need some good, clean water without chlorine, and the best water to use is water out of your water maker. Now add the proper amount of sodium metabisulfite and mix it up. There's the pickling hose, and we're going to put that inside the bucket. Then we'll set the valve to pickle and turn on the high pressure pump. The pickling solution will be pushed through your entire system. You just need to make sure that you have enough pickling solution to fully rinse your membranes.
Yeah, the sample will come out here. And the switchboard is right down here. The water maker is going to change my life cruising.
Okay, so why'd you start off the journey without a water maker?
I started off because in marinas, which in the United States, first and second world countries, you're used to pulling up to the dock and putting the hose in the boat and having as much water as you need to have. It never even occurred to me that there would be places where I was going to have difficulty getting water. But as soon as I left Panama, that was the last marina that I stayed in until I got to Tahiti, which was months later. And and you know, it suddenly became apparent that, you know, I've got a good tank here. I've got a 1,000-liter tank, and that is a lot of water. But you know, when you know that you can't make more, when you know there's not going to be more, or that you have to try to fabricate something to catch it with rain and get it into your tanks, you know, you suddenly become a little bit more thirsty, and you conserve a lot more. There's water ashore, and you can always fill up a jug with water, although it's going to be of questionable quality. When I finally did come to marinas, for example, Raiatea, both marinas charged for water. So, you know, there was always that additional fee that came onto your dockage for water use. And so here, the water maker that I installed, the Open Ocean, is not a huge one. It produces 18 gallons an hour. It runs off direct current. Some water makers are set up to run off the engine. I didn't have the ability to put one in the engine compartment. So there's going to be a considerable draw, but it's never going to be running when either the engine or the generator is not running. The mode of operation is going to be turn on the engine, you turn on the water maker, and fill it up. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity to another system, which always complicates things, but it's going to be a system that is going to leave me cleaner, and you know, it's going to be nice to get in a freshwater shower after a day of diving and just, you know, wipe that salt off rather than crawl into the berth with salt crusting on your skin.
And clean your equipment as well.
That's right. I've lugged my share of jerry jugs to fill this boat up, and you know, fitness is all well and good, but you know, I'd rather be surfing or skin diving than hauling water from the shore. I can sum it up real easily for you. Dumping a bucket of salt water over your head to wash just doesn't cut it.
Okay, I think we've taken the black art out of water makers now.
Yeah, there's nothing particularly complicated about turning seawater into freshwater. I've been doing it for, I don't know, 25, 30 years now, and yeah, it's dead easy.
What are you talking about? Well, you start when you were 2?
No, I haven't been doing it for 30 years, but the technology's been around for 30 years.
Okay.
If you like this video, give us a like down below and click here to subscribe. That really helps us. And if you want to watch more of us, click one of those.